What's up, everybody? College football week 6, and I've got 5 best bets for you. So first, we're going to look at Louisiana Lafayette at Georgia Southern. Louisiana Lafayette's laying 3. So Georgia Southern, they're coming off a 3-point loss at Minnesota. That can be a little deflating, especially after they had a chance to play LSU earlier in the season and they got destroyed. They don't really have a very explosive offense, run that triple option. If you can keep gap control on defense, it's just kind of hard for them to put a lot of points on the board, especially if they're coming from behind with an explosive offense like Lafayette. Trey Regis, the running back for Lafayette, he's got 10 yards per carry so far, about 40 carries, a little over 400 yards. And for Lafayette, what I like about them, they played Mississippi State at home to open the season. They had 430 yards, and that's an SEC defense, SEC talent. Playing at Georgia Southern, in the Sun Belt Conference, that's a bit of a step down. They also beat Ohio last week 45-25 on the road, so we know that they can travel well. We know that they're going to be ready to play on the road, and they had about 500 yards in that game as well. This offense is very explosive. They can put points on the board. They have over 550 yards per game so far. And I like them to cover the 3 on the road, especially if they get a lead and Georgia Southern has to come from behind. The second game we're going to look at here is Washington against USC. Washington's at home, laying 10.5. I got it at 10. I don't think the line will climb really much higher than it already is. USC, people like USC because they're coming off that upset win against Utah, but they had a lot of plays in that game where the quarterback, the third-string quarterback, could just kind of loft it up, and, Utah's defense just couldn't hang with them. But Washington probably has the best defense in the Pac-12. I really expect them to be able to lock down USC, even with those big play receivers that USC has. USC gives up over 400 yards a game. We know Washington can move the ball. I love Jacob Eason. He's one of my favorites, probably in my top 5 this season. Another thing I'm looking at is, USC only rushes for 3.6 yards per carry. They got -5 turnover difference this season. I just don't think that's good enough, especially when you have to go on the road like this to play Washington. Washington can rush for 5 yards per carry, so they can control the game and then open it up with Eason. My main point here is USC played BYU and Washington played BYU, both on the road. And Washington destroyed BYU. They beat them 45-19 last week. And USC, BYU took them to overtime. It was 30-27 in overtime. So, if you just kind of look at the common opponent, that's not going to be my main reason for taking Washington. But you do have to factor that in a little bit, that USC did not play that well on the road and lost to a team that, that Washington put away with relative ease. So we're going to take Washington we'll say -10 because that's the number that I got. The third game is going to be my alma mater, UAB, at Western Kentucky, laying 3. We're going to lay 3 with UAB. Their defense was lights out last year. They really surprised me last year, being able to come back and put together such a good team in a conference where there's a lot of explosive offenses. So they're only giving up 95 rushing yards per game this season. Now they're coming off a big victory against South Alabama. They beat Akron the week before. They've got a very easy schedule so far. They're giving up 281 a game on defense. But that at least shows you that they're coming out ready to play, even if, the teams that they're playing are not that good. They're 9th in yards per carry on defense. And they are number 1 in the country in sack percentage. So, I would look for them to be able to put a little pressure on the quarterback. For Western Kentucky, my main reason for betting against them is going to be because Stephen Duncan's out, the quarterback. He's pretty good. He can put yards up at any time. But their quarterback this week is going to be Ty Story, the transfer from Arkansas. He's okay, SEC talent, but he didn't win the starting job there. He didn't win the starting job at Western Kentucky, and his season last year was 11 touchdowns to 10 interceptions. So we know that he's going to turn the ball over just as much as he's going to score. They have less than 400 yards per game on offense, so this is not that explosive of an offense. They're coming off a loss to Louisville by about 3 touchdowns. And they lost to open the season to Central Arkansas, 35-28. That's an FCS team, a good FCS team. But I'll take UAB on the road because they've already shown in the past couple of seasons that they're not intimidated playing in conference. They're not intimidated playing on the road. And when you're laying only 3, you really just need them to win the game. And at the very least, if they win by a field goal, then we get our money back. So let's take UAB minus the 3. The next game we're looking at is going to be Northwestern at Wisconsin. Now we're going to lay 24 with Wisconsin, and that's a big number. And I was, to start the season, I was not very high on Wisconsin. They've showed a lot. They played lights out on defense. They shut out South Florida to open the season, 49-0. But we've seen that South Florida lost their last 7 games to end the season, and they're not doing so well this year either. They just can't score. And the second game they played was against Central Michigan. Central Michigan's banged up at a lot of different positions, including quarterback. They won 61-0, but that's just not a very good team. So, last week they played Michigan, and they just destroyed Michigan. I couldn't believe that, but that just shows you that Wisconsin's coming to play. They're not intimidated by playing in conference. This is a division game. This is a very important game for them, and they get it at home. So Northwestern, Hunter Johnson comes from Clemson. He's the starter now. He's thrown 1 touchdown and 4 interceptions this season. That's not good enough. He's completing 48% of his passes, 4.5 yards per completion. That's horrible. And so that just means that they're not going to have any explosive plays. They're not going to be able to move the ball against this good Wisconsin offense. I would even lean under 10.5 for Northwestern's team total. I collected on their team total last week under as well. And with TJ Green also hurt at quarterback, they really don't have a backup in case things go badly. Their backup's thrown 11 passes and 2 of them are interceptions. So they turned the ball over 3 times against Michigan State and 4 times in the opener against Stanford. If they turn the ball over against Wisconsin, they have no chance. And Wisconsin's just going to run it down their throat the whole game, and it'll probably take all 4 quarters for Wisconsin to build up a lead. But at 5.5 yards per carry for the season, they're going to wear down Northwestern, and if Northwestern can't score, this game's going to be over early. So another one that I'm looking at here, New Mexico at Liberty, we're going to take over 73. I kind of came to this one pretty late because, New Mexico is not a very good side, and neither is Liberty. They play pretty explosive on offense, but neither team plays any defense, and that's why we're going to go over the total. As long as we can get, a 35-35 score, we can probably win this one. New Mexico is going to throw the ball 40 times a game. Their defense has given up well over 500 yards per game. And for Liberty, they don't run the ball very well, but Buckshot Calvert, the quarterback, he's throwing for 275 yards per game. So you know that they're going to be able to throw the ball. The clock's not going to run because there's going to be so many passes. They give up a combined 75 points between the 2 teams per game, and that's over the total that we have here. Almost 1,000 yards per game given up between the 2 teams. And last season, Liberty won this game 52-43. That's 95 points in last year's game. So that's well over this total of 73. So hopefully we get a lot of offense, we get a lot of clock stoppages, and we can get this one at least into the mid-30s and cash this one. All right, so that's it for best bets. There's a few that I'm looking at here, like Clemson laying 27 against North Carolina. The first half is 16. I think I would rather lay the 16 in the first half because, Clemson can probably build a big lead. North Carolina has played very poorly in every first half, and they come back in the second half to either win or cover the number or whatever. So I think Clemson can get on them early. Maybe the first half is a good look there. Penn State and Maryland's going to be Friday night. The total that I have here is over 60. It might be 61 and a half now. But both of those teams ought to be able to score a lot. And, James Franklin wants to run the score up at Penn State if he can. I'm looking at maybe Duke +3 tomorrow. I haven't bet it yet. Kentucky +3. I kind of like Coastal Carolina +15.5 against Appalachian State. But the last one that I think I'm going to bet is going to be UCF -28 for the first half against UConn. I think they're going to have to bounce back after last week's disappointing loss to Pittsburgh, and with that high flying offense they have, they're going to run the score up, and UConn probably just can't stop anybody. From the first possession, UCF should be scoring touchdowns, and maybe they let their foot off the gas in the second half. Maybe they put some backups in, but we're going to lay 28 in the first half, and hope that they come out with a vengeance.